Welcome everybody to Too Legit to Crit, a tabletop role-playing podcast hosted by two guys who get nearly as excited for TTRPGs as the Wizards of the Coast execs do during their annual puppy punching retreat.
Really? Really? What do we just say about watching what we say?
But it's the Wizards of the Coast execs. They're like the worst human beings.
Yeah, it doesn't count.
It's accurate, but all right.
I mean, to be fair, I could have gone a lot worse than puppy punching.
I mean, you could have. So yeah, restraint was shown. I'll give you that.
You did not see the drafts that didn't make it.
I don't want to see the drafts that didn't make it because I see the drafts that do make it.
I'll send you the drafts that did make it. They were good.
Oh God. Okay. oh my God.
Well, my name is John Santana.
I am still Justin. That hasn't changed.
And today we are joined by a wonderful guest, none other than Lich Dad himself, Conlin. How's it going, Conlin?
Hello. It is good. Excited to be here. Excited to jump in and chat with you both.
We're excited to have you as well. However, I am going to have to partially abstain from this episode because, as you can tell, this is killing me. So I am struggling to speak. I am going to be around. I may interject from time to time, but for the most part, I'm going to let Justin and you guys just talk it out. And in the meantime, I'm going to try keep the chat entertained as much as possible. I do not promise to behave myself.
He's not going to. I'm well aware of this. I feel like the two of them are going to. I think you and Couch are both going to be on a mission to make my life hell today. So it's going to be great. I can't wait.
I am indeed, but I am here. So, I hope everybody enjoys the show. I do apologize once again for not taking a more active role today, but I do kind of need to kind of rest and recover a tiny bit. But yeah, have fun, guys.
No worries.
Awesome.
So, just us now. He's gone. He's
just
run away. Just the two of us, you and I. So, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So my name's Conlin. You can find me at lich.dad most places on the internet. That's like my personal stuff. I have a small TTRPG creating company called Has Been Wizards. You can find that in a couple different places too. I do a little bit of everything. I'm a software engineer by day, a TTRPG creator, YouTuber, live streamer, all the things, all the fun stuff.
All that good stuff.
yeah, it's a good time. I've been in the TTRPG space for a while now. I started playing when I was 13, I think. I started with D&D 3.5, kind of jumped into that prior to high school. Took a little bit of a break because I came from a very small, fairly conservative town, and no one really played D&D where I was from. So didn't really play much through high school, and then kind of got into college, started playing 5e, and then from there played off and on, and then the last, 3 years have really jumped into doing a lot more. I've been in a live stream AP for 2.5 years now, 2 years, something like that. Started making some content, writing a couple different games, working on some game jams, doing all sorts of fun stuff. So
yeah, sounds good. So I mean, you've definitely been around the block a little bit. So the AP that you're in, is that in 5e or what is that a 5e game?
Yep. Yeah, it is a homebrew world, 5th edition. It's on, if it's cool if I plug it, it's Tales of Initiative on Twitch. We play every Wednesday. The game I'm in, we have a couple games on the Tales channel. The game I'm in is called Sunset Over Vengalia. It's a high fantasy kind of standard D&D homebrew world with lots of gods and devils stuff playing in. That's kind of the main theme of the game. So
See, that makes me very happy because I don't normally get to talk about 5e a lot here because somebody else on the show doesn't like 5e. So today we get to talk about 5e, and I'm happy.
Let's do it. I'm in.
Yeah, so I mean, 5e in general, I love it. I know a lot of people don't. Where do you kind of stand on the whole 5e versus some of the other systems you've played and that sort of thing?
Oh man, this is such a loaded question in so many ways.
Yes, it is.
I enjoy 5e, especially having come from 3.5, which was like, just do you like dictionaries and math, right? Like 3.5 was just like, oh, I'm gonna make an attack roll. Let me go. All right, I gotta go look up. Okay, I have a +3 from this thing. All right, I gotta roll an extra d6 here, and then you're like, okay, I have a 43 to hit. I don't know. Does that hit? And it really has kind of that, like, I think D&D had a trajectory of like old school was very just like, do whatever you want. We'll figure out what the dice are. You know, that's why OSR games are so like, yeah, you roll a d20 and we'll figure out if it does a thing, right? Like that's kind of the whole, yeah.
We'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Yeah, to 3.5, which was like, we are going to codify everything. Literally, there are rules for jumping off of a balcony, grabbing onto a chandelier, doing a backflip, and stabbing someone. Like that, just ridiculous. And then I think 5e really took a lot of that and kind of like toned it down, right? It made it more video game-esque, made it more accessible. I think in doing that, they lost a little bit of the vibe of D&D. There's some of the things that I liked about 3.5 got lost in 5e, but I think overall it's a very accessible system for people to get into, especially starting out with games. It works really well for APs because it's just accessible. People know the rules. You're not also in the middle of trying to explain like what the game is, also trying to be like, and in this weird system that we're using, here's why you roll a D8 and not a D20 or whatever.
Yeah.
But all that said, I love OSR games and like the other stuff too. But 5e is definitely a powerhouse in the TTRPG space.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I kind of I started out playing Pathfinder, which obviously was essentially 3.5 part 2.
Yep.
And yeah, I kind of ran into the same thing where it was, it got to a point where you were rolling so many dice that it felt like you needed like a degree in maths just to figure out whether you could attack something or not half the time. And then I got introduced to 5e at a local club that we had that do like TTRPGs and all that sort of thing. I thought I'd give 5e a try there, and it's so straightforward, and there's no like insane power creep that happens either, which I really liked, because that was one of the things that, like, Pathfinder, by the time you hit 6th level, you're rolling 20 dice to hit, and that just doesn't happen in 5e, and I quite like that. And like I say, it does make it, especially for things like, streaming an AP or something like that, it is a lot easier because you're not seeing one person roll 50 dice and another person roll 3 and going, well, hang on a minute. The only time that really happens is when the rogue is attacking because they've got all their fucking sneak attack dice.
Yes. Yeah. I think 5e is very interesting, kind of just across the board. Like, it feels like a system that you can really like master, that like, for the most part, if you learn the rules, if you read the DMG, you read the player's handbook, like you're gonna have a pretty good grasp on how the game plays. Whereas with a lot of previous games, 3.5, Pathfinder, I think very similarly, like you might master your class. You might be like, I'm really good at playing rogue because I've played it enough that I understand the 40,000 rules that come into this thing. But yeah, it's interesting. I do wish there were more rules in 5e for just like general role play stuff. I think there's a lot of rules for combat. There's a lot of rules for like very specific, okay, you're trying to persuade someone, like that kind of stuff. But at times it's just kind of a weird, wanting to do something that's not just codified directly. It's a lot of hand wavy. GM just says, go do a thing. And that's what I like about a lot of the third-party games, the OSRs, the various other kind of indie games that are out there. A lot of those codify a lot more of that like storytelling thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I've been finding a lot more recently, because so in the last probably 4 or 5 months, I've started playing a lot more, well, just a lot more systems, to be honest, because I was very, very limited in what I'd been playing up until recently. And it's been really interesting to see the way some stuff is just handled differently by different systems. And there's a lot of stuff that I've come across, but like, oh, that'd be really cool to bring across. Or like the one thing that I've always found has never really been done really, really well in stuff that I've played so far is like traveling or like downtime sort of mechanics and stuff like that. There's never really been something where I've sat down and gone, this is a really cool way to spend downtime. Those sessions always kind of feel a bit, well, I don't really know what I want to do, so I'm just gonna do this. And those bits always kind of so that's the next big thing I'm looking out for, is something where I can do that.
Yeah, I'm actually a really big fan when I GM, which isn't very often anymore. I like to actually pull in other games. Yeah. When I can, like if there is downtime, if there is travel time, things like that, I think it's a really cool and interesting way to like pull in a different game and say, okay, we're going to, you're in the middle of downtime, so we're going to switch over to this like rule set. Blades in the Dark, I think, has some interesting things. I think people who limit themselves to a single system are missing out on the possibility of doing some really cool stuff. Blades in the Dark, very specifically, I like for running like heists in a game. Like you can pretty easily translate a 5e character into a Blades in the Dark character, and then basically just use the like heist rule set of Blades in the Dark to like run a heist in a 5e game, which I think is really cool. I think there's a lot of opportunity for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Blades is one that I've actually recently, I played my first game of Blades just before Christmas.
Nice.
And it was so cool. I fell in love with it. John actually ran that game, and it was so much fun. And yeah, I mean, like you say, the crossover is there. Like it's very, very obvious to see. But I never really thought about combining two games like that. That would actually be a lot of fun.
I think once you kind of pull yourself out of the limiting yourself to a single game, right? Like, oh, we're playing 5e, we have to do everything in 5e, which is where you get everybody trying to be like, oh, we'll just hack it into 5e. Like, oh, I want, space mechs in my 5e game. And you're like, it's kind of not built for that. Like, find a space mech game, convert it a little bit, and then use that instead. I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. I think that might be something I have to try out sometime, but I think that's a good one. But you also told me before we started that you also dabble a little bit in making your own systems as well, in your own games.
Yeah. I've got a couple out on my itch page. It's was.itch.io, WUZ. I've been really focused on game jams lately, and just kind of getting started by making simple one-page games, jumping into small games. The most recent one I did was actually a 24-word game, so you had to write all of the rules for the game in 24 words. Yeah, it was interesting. I like the game jams because they're very like creatively limiting. I have one long-term ongoing project that I've been working on, and then kind of filling in the gaps with the game jam stuff. But it's been a good time. I've kind of dabbled with a bunch of different genres, a bunch of different things. Trying to think which ones are most interesting to talk about. I think Spellbook is one that's done pretty well. It's a solo journaling game. It's kind of interesting. Like solo games do really well, especially on itch, because I think a lot of people don't have a group of people to play with, or like they're looking to play games, but like don't have someone to GM. So Spellbook is an interesting one. It was made for a bookmark game jam, so everything that you made had to fit on a bookmark. And the idea is you're a wizard discovering hidden spells in the everyday books around you. And so based on when you reach certain points in the book, you can roll. Really, it's actually, you don't actually roll. It's based on the like page and words and different things that you're on in that book, and like the author of the book and some of that kind of stuff. And you essentially figure out what spell you've like learned from this book. it's kind of just a fun way to track like what books you're reading, and then also have just like a game to play in the middle of it. So
that's pretty cool. I like that. Yeah, it kind of gives you, like I say, like a fun little thing to do whilst doing something that's already quite fun, right? I mean, because you're not going to read a book just for the sake of reading. You're reading them because you enjoy them, and then just adding another layer of enjoyment to that is, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like games, especially the smaller games. I like where they kind of pull in that the feeling of like, this is something I would do anyway. Especially solo and like journaling games in general. I think it's cool to have like, I'm reading a book anyway. Let me, have a little bit of a thing to just keep track. It's a fun way to have a journal that's not just, I read this book and I got to this page. Like you can, sit down and really say, you go through your history in your spell book and be like, this is, the books I read last year. This is whatever other thing. I think it's interesting, I guess.
I mean, definitely. Yeah. And I mean, like you're saying, the way that like the game jams give you that kind of restriction as well. Like I've done a few game jams, but like not TTRPGs. I did them for video games. I used to do a lot of that when I was at uni. I mean, the way that you'll kind of be given this one really constricting bit that it changes the whole way you approach the way you would normally design something, and that's always been really, really cool to me. But yeah, like hearing like some of those ones that you said there about having it all fit on like a bookmark or like 24 words. I don't even know how you'd write a game in 24 words.
That one was interesting. It's on my itch page. That one's Filet Minion, which is a game about you're a minion working for your boss, and you have to find the ingredients for their meal.
Okay.
Basically, it's really interesting. You can pretty well distill down a lot of games into very simple like mechanics. Because really all you need is the narrative and the success mechanic, right? Like how do you do something and succeed at it? And so that one is very, it's a D6 system where if you roll a certain number of D6s or like above a certain number, it let you succeed. And it's, there's failure, success with a drawback, and then like critical success basically, which is in a lot of systems out there. But yeah, it's interesting to kind of like, how do you get the vibe of a game and the rules of a game into 24 words and give people enough to go off of? It's a good time. So
yeah, no, definitely.
It's kind of funny. I've been doing game jams, I've been slowly getting like smaller and smaller. The first game jam I did was a 1-page, so full like 8.5 by 11 or A4 size page. And then it went to the bookmark, which was like, obviously smaller than that. And now it's like Filet Mignon, which is 24 words. It fits on a business card. So
your next one's going to be like, it has to fit on like a quarter.
Perfect. 2-word game jam. Yeah.
Success, fail. How does it work? Heads and tails.
Yeah.
I did one. Let's go next.
There you go. That's funny. You really could. So part of the 24 words, one of the things that was kind of a saving grace on it is the title and introduction didn't have to fit in those 24 words. So you could like add a little bit of, here's what the name of the game is. Here's like the vibe. The rules were the only thing that had to fit. So you could totally do, 6-word game jam, how to succeed, flip coin, heads, tails, or whatever, right? Like, it's interesting.
That would be so fun. But yeah, no, I think that's something I might look at myself in the future, because it's something I really enjoyed, like for video games and stuff. And as I'm getting more into, I mean, we've joked about it on here quite a few times about us building our own system, and like it's something that I think it would be a lot of fun to do just in general. And we've spoken to, including yourself now, we've spoken to quite a few people that make games and stuff like that, and every single one has said similar sort of stuff. Like it's just so interesting and so fun. And having done it like for video games, it would be really cool now to see if the same kind of obviously, I mean, the same mechanics aren't going to work, right? Because it's a different medium, but like the same kind of vibe and stuff can come across, and
yeah.
I think that'll be
And
a lot
it's
of
really,
fun.
I think it's interesting. I've never done game development. I am adjacent. I'm a software engineer, so like I do web stuff. I've never really done game stuff, but I play a lot of games, a lot of video games, and so it's really interesting. I think sometimes to like see something in a video game and be like, oh, I really like that aspect of a thing. One of the other games that I have that is an open source rule set that I'm working on is called Run and Hide. That's sort of based on the gameplay vibe of Dead by Daylight and like some of those hunted games. And it's interesting. It's all based in a sort of rock, paper, scissors card flip mechanic where you can choose between run, hide, or fight. The predator can choose between slay, search, or chase, I think, something like that. And then like depending on how they match up, you either get away or you take a failure, basically. And so it's the whole vibe of the game is basically you are being chased by something that is much stronger than you, which is a thing. And I think that was an interesting one for me because the Dead by Daylight was kind of the inspiration, but then it also kind of came from like, it's really hard past level 3 in 5e to really make something that feels like there's stakes. Like it's hard to just be like, okay, you need to run from this thing. Like it's going to kill you. You don't have a chance of hurting it. Like because of I think 5e just really pushes towards that combat mechanic, right? Everything is codified into combat. And so I wanted a game that was very like, very asymmetric, felt like, you know, the Predator movies or like a ghost hunting, like, you know, that kind of movie or something like that, where like this thing is gonna kill you if it catches you. You don't have a chance here. You have to do something. And so even like the fight mechanic is like, if you play fight and it plays chase or something else, I can't remember exactly how it all shakes down. It's all in the rules. Like it's not that you're attacking it and like hurting it. You are pushing it over or shoving a cabinet on it so that you can get away.
Or like in Dead by Daylight, putting the like pallet down to No, I mean I've played a lot of Dead by Daylight.
Nice, there you go.
But yeah, no, like you're saying, I mean that feeling as well. Like when you're playing as a survivor in Dead by Daylight, like your heart is going. And you're right, like in 5e, it's really hard to get that same vibe once you get past sort of, you know, once you start getting into your subclasses, because especially like if you throw something at them that is so hard they can't deal with it, it'll kill them all in one round. And if it can't kill them all in one round, they'll find a way to beat it. So yeah, I think it's it's really cool to like you say, bring stuff from video games into this space as well. I mean, one of the things that I've been trying to do is bring like raids and stuff from some of the MMOs that I play, bring them and like their fight mechanics into like a dungeon type thing. So the one I've been working on lately, well, I say lately for a while now, is from old school RuneScape, the third raid that they introduced, Tombs of Amasket, trying to bring that whole thing, because it's got like puzzle rooms that lead to the boss fight, and then there's four puzzle rooms that lead to 4 boss rooms that then leads to one final boss room. And just as like you go through it and you're like, oh, this is a whole dungeon, like sweet. So trying to like bring those across and make the mechanics from the raid work in a tabletop setting it's been really, really cool and really, really fun. So yeah, it's definitely something that I would like to do more of, I reckon.
Yeah, there's so many lessons. You know, level design in a video game is basically the same as dungeon design in a TTRPG, and so I think there's so many cool things. The Zelda dungeons, every Zelda game, but especially like Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, like the dungeons and like puzzles and things in those games have always been a big inspiration for me in dungeon design, because I just love the like, it's linear but like somewhat non-linear depending on how you want to approach it. You got to have certain gear. I don't know, that's all always really fun. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, like I've always used things like you say. I mean, for me it was I used a lot of Uncharted puzzles because like going through that, you get those rooms where it's like you got to pull that lever, which drops that rock down, and like getting those kind of rooms and then building them out and being like, right, this is the puzzle. Have fun, guys, and then watching them try and figure it out. And then you always get like one player who's played the game and like clocks it. It's like, I know this one. So
always fun.
I always add a twist.
Yeah, there you go. That's the way to do it, right? Yeah. I always love the memes where it's like, party has spent 8 hours trying to solve this puzzle. DM is like holding the like children's book of puzzles. It's like puzzles for 4-year-olds, and it's like, okay, well, this is taking you so long to solve.
I've been on both ends of that.
Yep, it's a good time.
Yeah. Oh,
always
yeah,
fun.
No, that's always fun. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so what would you say of like the games that you've like created and stuff like that? What would you say is your favorite and the one you're most proud of?
Ooh, that was a really interesting question. So I guess things that are finished. One of my favorites, and this one didn't do super well. It's one of the one-page Game Jam ones. The design ended up kind of just looking like a restaurant menu. But I thought it was a fun idea. It's called Tongues. The idea is that it's kind of like a world-building game based with a deck of cards, sort of like a Quiet Year, some of those other games like that. But the idea is that you are building the history of a language in your world. So it's not a Conlin game. Like, you're not generating the language itself. You could play it in addition to having like a Conlin and like having, written out actual language, but it's more just like what words were lost and found over like the history of your world and this culture that is developing this language. And so depending on the cards you draw and like which eras you're in, it leads to different like defining a word for family. And like that's like early generation, like, okay, cool, you've got your familial unit is like a thing. And it's not more, it's like I said, it's not like a Conlin game where you're sitting there being like, okay, the word for family is XYZ or whatever. It's more like this culture's word for family refers to 4 blades of grass like in the field, kind of, whatever the like feeling of why is that the word for that thing. And then there's these events too where like different words can be lost or like changed depending on things happening. So like one of the events is like a famine happens, like how does that impact your words for things? And I really liked that game. I really liked kind of the way that it came out. I liked the sort of the world building vibe. I thought it was kind of a fun thing. It didn't like get a lot of downloads when I first put it out, but I was very proud of the way that one came out. It kind of looks like the menu at a Greek restaurant because it's blue and has a lot of words on it. So I kind of understand it, but it's a good time.
Oh, that's cool.
So,
No, I mean, I think like anything that's adding to a world is always good fun. To me, it's something that I've always kind of struggled with is that world building element myself. So anything I can find that helps me do that, I always love. Getting things where it's like a really cool way to build a city out, or like that. Building out the history of a language behind something is always going to be a really cool tool to have. Because it could also lead you to then using what you've created with that in a game that you're doing somewhere else, because you could use it for like the history of Elvish in your world or whatever, right? So yeah,
and
that
was really the vibe I wanted from that game. It's something I've always wanted to run a streamed game that started from scratch. So no world, no plot, no concept of anything there, and like started out playing with a bunch of pick up a Quiet Year, pick up a couple other things, pick up like some world building games. There are like literally continent building games out there that you can run with like groups. Start at scratch, build a world over the course of the first 4 or 5 episodes of the stream, and then get into a 5e or a Mork Borg or like whatever system fits the thing, and then play in that world that you've created with all the the people who are going to be playing in the game. I think it could just be really cool.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that would be a lot of fun. And I think as well, like for what you're saying there about having it like be a streamed thing as well, that would be a really cool thing, because it would, everybody that's watching has the same level of knowledge of the world as it's growing as well. There's no coming to something and then going, well, I have no idea what's happening in that world because I've never played in that space. Like it's a completely new thing, and that's really, really cool. And yeah,
I've also played with.
Oh yeah,
I've also played with the idea.
Oh
yeah, go ahead, go for it.
Oh, no. I was just gonna say, like, I think it would also help, like, the players get a lot more invested in the homebrew element of the world because they help build it as well.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing that I've always tried to do when I run games is keep some level of like improv available to say like, okay, you are a cleric that worships this god, like, who are they? Like, and you don't necessarily have to define those things, right away. You can define them later in the game. I really like the sort of feeling of, oh wait, I have something for this in my games. One of the things I've played with before too is like, even in 5e games, not requiring someone to pick all of their spells right away. Like you roll up your character at level 1. Don't put any spells in. If you know that, if there's 2 spells that you want, like do that. Then when you get to a point in the game where it's like, oh shit, I wish I could cast knock or, arcane lock, whatever spell it is, just be like, oh wait, I have a free spell slot. Like I haven't put a spell into this place yet. I'm going to retcon kind of the improv of the world and be like, oh wait, no, I do have this spell and here's why. Right.
Yeah.
So I like that kind of stuff. I think there's also a really interesting aspect with the like kind of streaming a game, where you are doing the world building, where you could also have like Twitch chat or YouTube chat, like as a player in some of that world building. And like, I think it'd be a ton of fun to have like a god of chaos that was just Twitch chat.
Twitch chat.
Like,
yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be so good actually. Cause I mean, Twitch chat, YouTube chat in general, just they are a world of chaos.
Oh yeah, give them channel points to vote on stuff, or give like whatever thing makes sense, and then just be like, do whatever you want to do. You want to tweak something, have channel points that are like, no, actually that thing you just did doesn't happen now. Retcon and do it again.
Work. Yeah. No, absolutely, yeah. Like, that gap you just jumped. Yeah, it's actually 20 foot wide, not 10.
Yep. yeah.
You all just fell. Unlucky.
Yep, it's a good time. We actually have a game on the Tales channel that plays Friday nights called Total Party Chaos. So TPK, but with chaos instead of kill, right? That uses some of those mechanics where the world is actually influenceable by the Twitch chat. Like you can spend channel points to like give a monster more HP or like, heal the party, give someone advantage. Like you can do lots of fun things. It gets wild on some of the things that you can do. But it's a really good time. But I'd love to bring that into the sort of world building side of it as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Be really cool.
I think, like you say as well, like giving it that whole that skin of they're the god of chaos as well. It's just it adds that whole extra level of it's influencing the world for a reason, not just for the sake of. I think that would actually be really, really cool. Because then as well, like if any of the players decide that that's going to be the deity for their cleric or whatever, right? They've got to worship Twitch chat.
yeah, that's true. You got to make Twitch chat happy.
Yeah, you got to make Twitch chat happy, which is
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah, that would be so much fun to play as well.
It would be really fun to write up like a wild magic style class or like subclass for sorcerer or for cleric or whatever that is just like Twitch chat based. Like it's only useful in a live stream, but is just like you have to you want to do something, like put it to a poll in Twitch chat. Like you gotta do it that way.
Cleric of Chaos.
Yeah,
that'd be so fun.
I like it. It'd be really interesting. I might dig into this a little bit. I might write some subclasses that are all live stream.
We might have to have a chat after this.
yeah. Interesting.
So something else that you mentioned there, which is something that I'm really interested in trying out, but I haven't as of yet, was Mork Borg, and just
yes,
all the Borg stuff in general.
Yeah. So I am a massive fan of the board games. There's a bunch of them. I'm actually working on one of the other games. The long-term running project that I have right now is a space-based Mork Borg hack or compatible game. There are a couple of those that already exist, but all of them are different in various ways.
Yeah.
The nice thing about sci-fi and space is that like you have everything from Dune to like the Foundation, right? Like it's a wide arc of
limit.
yeah. So yeah, the board games are really interesting. I think they are, in my opinion, like the perfect distillation of OSR into a like single rule set. They don't do anything super complicated. They're very much more based in the idea like a lot of the items that you'll get when you roll up a character in Mork Borg don't have a use. It's not like you have a torch that lets you do this mechanical thing in the game. It's like you have flint and steel. If you can figure out a way to light a fire, like your GM will tell you if that succeeds or fails. Yeah. In the game that I'm working on, there's one thing you can roll that's like you just have a bag of strange silver balls. They're like ball bearings, basically, but they're just silver. And you don't know where they came from. You don't know what they are. They don't actually have a mechanical purpose. But I had one of the games that well, in one of the playtest games that I ran of it, one of the characters rolled that and then a can of Vodka, which was like a vodka alcohol with caffeine in it kind of thing that had been like created for the game. And like, she was like, can I put the strange space balls in the alcohol and make some kind of weird space Molotov cocktail? And I was like, yeah, I don't know what this is going to do, but sure, we'll see what happens. And it ended up like she created a new weapon and I had to like on the fly be like, that's a D8 damage, I guess. I don't know. Like, but that's what I love about the board game so much is they're all very like vibe heavy and not rules heavy. So it is all just like, yeah. And you know what? That's a great idea. You absolutely can do that. And instead of, 5e kind of game where you have to then sit down and be like, okay, it's going to be in Tasha's where those rules are. Let me go find, okay. Or just be like, oh yeah, there's no rules for this. I don't know. I guess roll an attack.
Yeah.
They're really cool.
That sounds good. Yeah. Because I think we covered one that I really want to play just because I was a huge fan of the cartoons growing up, but it was Duck Borg, which is the I really want to play it purely because like I had the song stuck in my head for weeks after we did that episode as well. But I really want to play that one.
Yeah, that's one I haven't actually dug into. I have almost all the other Borg games, but I need to get Duck Borg and actually like sit down and look at the rules. Yeah. It's a lot of fun too. I think.
I was just gonna say, if somebody is gonna get into Borg, what would you say is like the best one to like start with going into Borg, seeing as you've got all of them?
That's a good question. So much of it really has to do with like what setting you want to play in. So Mork Borg is dark fantasy. Death in Space is very like near space age space travel kind of thing. Like it's not very I don't know what it's space. It's space, but it's not like high sci-fi. It's not like Dune or Star Wars or Star Trek even. It's like you're flying around in basically NASA space shuttles. Good luck surviving. I personally think that Cyborg is the best like encapsulation of the Borg rules. It's the same people who made Mork Borg. It took a bunch of the things that were somewhat confusing about Mork Borg, where there was like they hadn't really quite nailed how this mechanic works, and kind of updates some of that, and then just really is like I mean I'm a huge fan of cyberpunk stuff, so in general like it's nice to just have a cyberpunk world that's not just CDPR like Cyberpunk 2077 style thing. I think Cyborg, if that's the kind of game you want to run, if you want to run a cyberpunk game, is the best like Borg system that exists.
Cool.
Death in Space is really interesting. It changes some other things. I actually, for like, I have it right here. Vast Grim is really cool. Another space one, but more based kind of, again, sort of in that like Dune realm. Like there's these giant space worms that are trying to take over the world and everything. And I don't know, it's very interesting. All the lore that comes into the Borg games. But yeah, I think if you want to go pure and you want to run fantasy, Mork Borg, easy option. If you want to do something a little more like interesting, better rule set, I think, but like some changes to the rule set, Cyborg. And then when it's out, if you want to run space, come check out Mork Soul, which is the one that I'm working on.
Obviously.
It's a thing.
Oh, that sounds good. I mean, John, we are definitely adding some board games to the list. That is happening. Just reading chat there. We're absolutely putting them in the list. And I think definitely once your space one is ready, then that's going on the list. Absolutely. Because awesome. I love a space game, and the stuff that we've read on like the Borg stuff is really fun. So yeah, it's definitely something that I want to have a crack at.
Yeah. I guess I would also be remiss if I didn't mention Pirate Borg, which is like dark Caribbean, Pirates of the Caribbean, like Borg game as well. That one's a really cool one too. There are all sorts of board games. They're all over the place. Anything you want vibe wise, it's a great time
for it.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. John, do you want to ask that question? You can come in and get a couple of words in here if you've got it in you.
Well, I can certainly try. So, Conlin, we are starting a new project now. We're calling it the Crit List, and we basically invite people on to run us through a game. For the most part, like the first couple that we've got are developers and designers that are bringing their own games on, and they're going to introduce us to those games. And I wanted to kind of formally invite you if you wanted to come on and run some Solborg for Justin, myself, and most likely Couch, who's in the chat.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. It actually is like the rules are fairly well defined now. I've run a couple playtests of it, so it's at least at a playtest state. So if you're cool with a game that doesn't have full art and a book, but has most of the rules,
we are fine with that. Definitely. We'll after this, we'll keep in touch, and we'll definitely get something set up.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, that'd be fun.
Okay, so I now need to go take a lozenge because that hurt.
I'm getting my revenge this week. But yeah, I mean that'll be awesome. And yeah, it's like I said, I'm just so looking forward to trying it out and getting involved. So, and I do love a bit of space.
Like I said, there's like quite a few space Borg games. It's interesting. I don't know why. Like nobody really has made another fantasy one. Like I think Mork Borg kind of managed that. Cyborg like did the cyberpunk so well that I think everybody was like, all right, well, whatever.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. But like Death in Space is much more of a sort of mothership style game, but like in the Borg system. Vast Grim, like I said, is more like space fantasy. So you're, doing, there's space worms and the end of the world and like necromancers of space and like all sorts of things. I love it. It's so cool, but like it's very fantasy, not science fiction. Happens to be in space. There's another one called Ork Borg that is it's like 40K inspired kind of where you play as orcs on a derelict spaceship. But so Mork Soul, the one I'm working on, which used to be called Scourgeborg, which is why the link I just posted in chat says Scourgeborg and not Mork Soul. One of it started from none of those games do space combat well. Like Mothership, if you read the rules for space combat, it's like, don't do it. You're gonna die. Like as it turns out, shooting, giant cannons at your little tin spaceship isn't a good idea. You're probably gonna kill everyone.
Yeah, it's not a good time.
And that carries over into Death in Space. Vast Grim also is very just like probably shouldn't. Like, you're probably going to be in a bad situation if you try to do space combat. And so I really wanted to focus Mork Soul on like the spaceship building mechanics and the like space combat mechanics. So it still feels like a board game. Like, if you get shot down in space, there's a good chance that like your whole crew will die. So you should probably be careful. But there is an actual like there's shield, like spaceships have shields, and like there's some capability of like, you know, actually doing space combat in that way. And that's what a lot of the rule system sort of is based around. So
that's cool.
It's a fun one. Should be cool.
I mean, that's something as well that like there was a what was it? It was a TV show I used to watch when I was younger that had a lot of that kind of like ship to ship combat in space. That was always really cool. And like most of the space games that I've played in sort of the TTRPG, again, like you're saying, all combat is kind of you probably shouldn't. Because, you know, I've played like a lot of Stars Without Number, stuff like that, where it's literally a case of if you get into combat, you're going to die. It's just a matter of how. And having something where you can kind of have those, you know, little skirmishes in the ship and stuff like that, that'll be really cool. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to giving that a try.
And it's also, I think, the other realm of like those kinds of games are like Starfinder or Traveler or like some of those other more 5e-esque games where now you've got space combat that's like super well codified, and like you lose out. One of my favorite things about the board games in general is like the GM hardly ever rolls. So like as a GM, you're not rolling to attack somebody. The players are rolling to defend. So there's like not very many GM rolls outside of, you know, some random chance things or like rolling on tables. And that, you know, space combat, I think, is especially when you have like, okay, this spaceship has every player in it. Now the round is like the captain does a thing, the pilot does a thing, the gunner does a thing. Like you get this like ridiculous sort of like roll through of just like, okay, but we're all still in the same ship. Like this is going to take forever. Like I think Starfinder runs into that. I think some of the other ones run into that kind of thing. So it's interesting. I tried to balance some of that. The you don't mind me talking about mechanics a little bit.
Absolutely, go for it.
The sort of general mechanic, I really wanted that sort of Star Trek vibe of like, you know, divert all power from shields to engines and we're going to ram them kind of thing. So it starts out with the captain basically allocating out points to say like, okay, engines get 4 points, shields get 1 point, weapons get 2 points kind of thing. Those points then add D4s into your like roles as the pilot or as the gunner or as those things. So you get kind of that feeling of like the captain's calling the shots, but it's also not the other thing that space games run into a lot is just like, oh, the captain and the pilot are the only ones doing anything in this space combat. Everyone else is sort of just twiddling their thumbs and hoping they don't die. The captain sort of assigns out those points. You get extra D4s to roll on top of your standard like D20 roll, depending on how much power has been diverted to your system. And then you roll a D20, and you have ship classes that also can change like modifiers. But for the most part, you're only rolling like a D20, maybe some D4s, and then adding a couple things to it based on your abilities and your class. And then all the rest of the space combat kind of follows from that, which I think it's a lot more fun. It makes the captain feel useful without giving them full control.
No, absolutely. I think that, like you say, that is something that other space games that I have played have run into is you kind of, if you're not the pilot, you're not doing anything. But I like that whole thing of, you know, what the captain is doing is essentially he's giving orders in the form of, you know, these points, and then those points then get used to do stuff from the person that's actually there. I really like that. I think that's a really cool way to handle it. So yeah, no, I'm getting even more excited now.
Good. That was the goal.
I mean, that just sounds awesome. And yeah, I think we're all going to be very excited to give that a try. I'm getting flooded with ideas of spaceships now. So You mentioned earlier as well about the APs that you play in, and the one that you stream. Was it Wednesdays? You stream that, yeah?
Yep.
I did hear that right.
Yeah, Wednesdays.
So what can you tell us about that? That if anybody wanted to come check out, what they can expect and that sort of thing as well.
Yeah. So Tales, honestly, I think is a very, very like solid group of people playing games. We're all very focused on the sort of like improv performance aspect. We do a lot of role play. We do a lot of like focus on character development, character growth, all of that kind of stuff. As opposed to, I think one of the things that a lot of APs fall into is they either play like home games that are just streamed, right? And then it's not like there's not a lot of character growth, or like if it is, it's more home game style character growth, or they're more like just combat focused, or just like, okay, we're gonna run this like little one shot thing. There's not a lot of time for character growth, whatever reason. So I think Tales is really good at like maintaining a balance of combat and roleplay. We have a bunch of really interesting characters. We're running a couple different pieces of homebrew, a couple things. We have two TTRPG designers on the Sunday or on Sunset, the Wednesday games. So always fun stuff with the homebrew and different classes. One of our players is running a class that they wrote themselves and like developed and has for sale on like I think DM's Guild and a couple other places. So some cool stuff there. The vibe is very it's serious, but we make a lot of jokes, I guess. like we take the game seriously. We're not just sitting there cracking jokes the whole time. But there are a lot of like, fun jokes and we have a good time. It's a lot of fun. I play Chorus, the ranger, who is the worst ranger ever. He's a melee ranger, which is kind of a contradiction. And he's very bad at most of the things that rangers are typically good at. So
okay,
it's a good time. Yeah.
That sounds like every character I've ever played, because I just suck at rolling dice. John, don't you nod your head at me, John? I mean, it's accurate, but yeah, no, dice hate me. When you do like run for us, you'll see. Because I won't just like that's the annoying thing as well. Like I don't just roll nat ones or anything like that. I will just roll under whatever the target is. It could be like a target 5 and I'll roll a 4. Like I'll always just roll under.
Nice.
I think that there needs. So I do feel like Justin's characters are conceptually great, but the dice rolls don't reflect the concept. So he'll come up and I've got this I've got a concept for this character that's basically a grappler, and she's gonna grapple everything, and it just the dice rolls to just.
Yeah, so the character that he's talking about there was in Skulls and Shackles campaign that John ran way back when, and I built this really cool grappler, and like it was an awesome character. And then it got time to like that first combat. I was like, I'm gonna do so well in this, and every single grapple I rolled, like, because it's contested rolls, but every single contested roll, I would just roll like 2 or 3 below whatever John was rolling for their contest. Every single time.
Amazing.
So I did nothing the entire fight. I just basically walked up to people and gave them a hug every once in a while. And then they would respond by just punching me in the face with their sword.
This is sounds a lot like how things go for Chorus as well. Although mine are typically like I either roll really well and then also the GM rolls really well. And like that's awful. Or I roll really badly and the GM rolls really well kind of thing. Like I'll roll like a 2 and he'll roll like an 18. Or like, I'll roll a 22 and he'll roll like a 27. And I'm like, how did this happen?
Yeah. No, for me, it's always just no matter what I roll, they'll somehow roll higher than me. Or if they roll really low, I'll find a way to roll lower.
Amazing. To give you an idea, the sort of general vibe of combat with Chorus that always seems to happen, and I don't know why. I tried different things every time, but our last big combat, I was like, oh, hell yeah, I hit level 9. I got haste. I'm a Horizon Walker Ranger, so I was like, oh, hell yeah. Haste, this is going to be so cool. Like, I'm going to jump in there. I'm going to hit a bunch of times, do all these things. And then it turns out we're fighting fire elementals that just do automatic damage. And so I just failed my concentration check instantly. So like I roll in, I try to do something. I miss 2 swings. Yeah. The fire elemental comes up to me, automatic fire damage, immediately fail concentration check. Hasted lethargy, so I can't do anything the next round. Then I get hit with a massive hit from a wall of fire and a couple other things. Go down. Oh, I guess actually one thing I did do. I have a homebrew spell that I really enjoy. It's called Protector Swap. It's when a ally of yours gets hit by an attack before the damage is rolled, you can teleport and switch places with them. Okay, you automatically take the attack. And the damage is applied to you with whatever resistances you have, kind of thing. So I did do that. I got through my lethargy round. I was like, oh no, our cleric is about to die. Swap. I swapped into their grapple, got just attacked over and over and over again, went down, got rezzed with a big healing spell, and then the last round of the fight walked up to the big villain and just one-shot it. Like I did no damage the entire combat except for the last damage on the big bad. Like it was amazing. And that's pretty standard. I'm usually either grappled or in difficult terrain or doing something not related to the combat. I jumped out a window one time and took like 40 damage. yeah, it's great. And it is great too, because like melee ranger, like rangers are really based, I think, on the idea of like, you're standing kind of far away and like lobbing arrows or throwing weapons into this thing. No, Chorus just runs in and smacks shit with a sword.
I have a sword.
We're good to go. Yep.
Oh, I love that. I think that's something that I've always like loved the concept of as well, is taking like a character concept and just completely turning it upside down. Like a character build that I was working on a while back was a healing rogue, just because I thought that would be a really fun concept of he just like appears from the shadows, patches you up, and then just fucks off into the shadows again.
There's a build for that somewhere, something similar. I can't remember which one it is. One of the rogue subclasses though, that like gives you extra, I think it's whatever one gives you dash as a bonus action. Yeah. And a couple other things. You just like run around the battlefield healing like, people with health potions and medic kits. Like, it's I love it. Yeah, that's so much fun. It's something that I love doing, because it just like you get to turn things completely around, because like especially during like that initial like interaction with the group as well, where like you're introducing characters and you're like, you look like a rogue, you're dressed like a rogue, and then you get into that first combat and they're like, cool, the rogue's gonna do rogue stuff. You're like, oh, it's okay, buddy, let me just patch that up for you. It's like, what are you doing? Amazing. Chorus, my whole concept on Chorus was I was reading the Horizon Walker like book and was like, oh, cool, they basically get the like Nightcrawler attack and then teleport and attack thing. That would be a really fun thing to base a character around. And then I didn't think about the fact that that's level 11. Like it's so far down the line. I had to get all the way to that thing. And so we're still not there. We haven't hit it yet. And it's a good time. He's also classically trained as a paladin was the like backstory. So like his upbringing was like, oh, you're gonna be a paladin of like this god, and he was like, yeah, fuck that, I'm out, and went off and became a ranger. So he's like kind of bad at both things. So, it's great. It's we love it. It's a ton of fun.
That's awesome. I love that. That's cool. I'm gonna have to check that out, I think.
Come swing by Wednesdays. It's 5 p.m. my time, which is, I don't know what time that is, EST to GMT.
10. There we go.
10. We also have recaps. Like we have YouTube VODs and Twitch VODs and stuff too. If you ever want to just check out one of those.
That's awesome. I'll definitely have to check that out.
Cool.
Yeah. John, is there anything else that you would like to add with your lovely ill voice? He's currently muted and he's trying to find the unmute button. There we go.
Yes, I was having an old man moment.
He was.
So I'm going to bring my dulcet tones. And so Conlin, every week we have a few collaborators that send in topics of discussion that we can kind of toss around. and just basically, see what we can add and what we can kind of bring to the table in this regard. So would you mind joining us for that?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. I think I've run in some interesting circles with some of the TTRPG design stuff. So happy to shoot you whatever I've got around.
Okay, so let me just bring up the Trello now. And I'm working on 2 screens. So it's going to be a D4 today. So
it is going to be a D4 today. As
per usual, using my purple D4. I don't have the dice cam set up because I couldn't be bothered. All right. So in this case, it is a 2. So we are actually getting one from Chris today.
Oh, we are.
Okay. So Chris wants to know about myths in relation to the tabletop role-playing game hobby. What ones have you heard of, whether that's infamous or infamous? Have any been debunked? What would need to be kind of been looked into, sort of Mythbuster style? So basically, what are the most common myths for you guys?
Interesting question.
There's a lot around like how some of the spell interactions work, but I think a lot of them, like at this point, especially with 5e, a lot of those like spell interaction myths get sort of addressed on what was Twitter is now, was it now X or whatever the hell it's called, I don't know. A lot of those got kind of debunked on there, but one that is still going strong, and I've even looked at it, and after reading it, I was like, it doesn't work. Is the whole it's like using sanctuary, what's it called? I can't even remember the spells now. There's like a whole set of cleric spells that if you use like these 3 together, you basically become like an unstoppable thing in the middle of combat. And it's just like every single time I see it, I'm like, it doesn't work. But it just keeps like circulating. And let me just, I've got a character with the spells, I'm just pulling it up now. Because I'm that level of sad.
Well, there was one similar in Pathfinder First Edition, and it was they called it the Orodin, and it was basically, if I'm not mistaken, it was a multi-class Oracle Paladin, and the way some of their abilities kind of synergized and worked together meant that you had unlimited healing. So using a combination of lay on hand, and I can't remember exactly what the specifics were, but things like that I've always just seen as terrible game design, to be fair.
Yeah. I found the spells.
All right.
So it's combining Spirit Guardians with Sanctuary. Is a common one that I see a lot with in regards to 5e. Because Spirit Guardians, basically, you put a bubble around yourself of these little fey creatures that deal damage to things around you. And it also like slows things that are in it and all that goodness. And then Sanctuary, basically, you just can't be hit. Like, it's impossible to hit you, basically. But the issue and the reason it doesn't work is one of the things of Sanctuary is the minute you do damage, it turns off. Sanctuary turns off. The argument that people always make is, but it's not us doing the damage, it's the fey creatures, but it's you doing the spell, and that's why it doesn't work. But yeah, that's one that bugs me a lot.
All right, Conlin, have you got any myths in regards to the hobby?
Can't think of any like really off the top of my head. I know I read the like Jeremy Crawford's Twitter every now and then, like find the fun, errata stuff that he puts out. But I don't know. All I was going to say kind of in relation to this is like, I think this is such a problem of 5th edition, especially, is like there's so many people that play it, and the rules are like, it's kind of what we were talking about earlier, where it's like the rules are very codified. Like it's like this works in this way. Whereas with some of those OSR systems and some of the other stuff, it's more just like, you know what? If you can figure out a way to cast those 2 spells together, sure, that might work. Yeah, try it. And it's interesting. I think the most interesting thing we had recently was someone trying to figure out if you could, with create or destroy water. There's like the specifications are kind of weird on how the like you can, when you upcast it, you can either cover more area or increase like the gallons of water that you're adding. But the gallons only applies if you're putting it into a container, and the area is like just over a specific area. So we were like, could you cast it over an area and then increase the amount of gallons that are like just falling as rain in that area? And like the rules are not very clear on any of that. Like there's lots of questions about all of that kind of stuff. And like but the other one, I guess maybe a myth kind of thing is create water is a person considered an open container. That's always that's the question. Big one, yeah.
I mean, the one that springs to mind for me is nothing to do with mechanics or even systems. The biggest one that we've seen in the history of the hobby was the Satanic Panic.
Yeah.
You know, we're all raising the devil apparently, and I mean, I know I am, but that's nothing to do with
that's separate. Yeah, that's separate. Like that's just in your spare time.
That's just another hobby I've got, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was definitely a big one way back when, but I think as well, like a lot of the myths and all of those kind of things over the years, I think a lot of them have been debunked. There's one that's I've just seen starting to come up now because the wording for the spell Fireball in 5e is you just have to point at a location. You don't have to have line of sight. There's a lot of people asking if you could like create the fireball inside someone's mouth or something because you just point at it. So that's a debate that has just started, which maybe we need to dive into Mythbusters style to get to the bottom of, because
it's almost like it's a poorly designed system or something. I don't know.
Well, this is kind of the thing, right? Like 5e doesn't really have a specification of, is there a difference between a fireball going off right next to you versus like in your mouth from a damage side? Like maybe you can do that, but like does it matter from what the spell says, right?
I mean, with the way the rogue's evade works as well in 5e is you could spawn it in their mouth, but then they could still dodge it and evade it and take no damage, even though the fireball spawned inside them.
Yep.
I mean, I do think that's an inherent problem, mostly with 5e, because when it first came out, there was a lot of uncertainty about the rules, and it was, you know, a lot of it's GM discretion. A lot of it is, okay, so the GM will have the final decision, and that is great. But then you have a subset of the player base which kind of try and take advantage of that. Yeah. Of kind of going, okay, so if it's at your discretion, then why don't you decree that I can do this in somebody's mouth?
Yeah.
You know, and it is a bad habit that kind of players are, again, a subset of the player base fall into, of kind of going, oh, this is the way I've understood this. So as you're the GM and it is up to you, then rule of cool, you should allow this. And there is a certain level of expectation. To be honest, for that reason, I would love to be a 5e GM, because I just go, no, fuck off.
Well,
I think there's...
I was just going to say, one of the other ones that was kind of a theory crafted build, which I guess you could put into the myth category, was the coffee lock. Which, thanks to one of the races that were introduced in Spelljammer, isn't theory anymore. You can build it because I think it's the Thrycreen don't need to sleep. It literally is in the race description. They do not sleep. They don't need to do any of the stuff for a long rest to get a long rest. So there is no downside to them becoming a coffee lock. So coffee lock exists now. It's just something you can do.
Can you guys think of any, let's call them myths for argument's sake, that are applicable in one system, but then because of habit, they transfer over to others, and that's when they become a myth? Because I've got one in mind.
I think the one of the big ones for me would be nat 20s on skill checks. It's not a thing. It doesn't exist in a lot of systems, but for some reason people still say, "Oh, I got a nat 20 on that deception." They definitely believe me. Like, no, that you still rolled a 21 because you've only got a 1 in deception. That is a big one for me, actually. I didn't even think about that one, but yeah, that's a big one.
Well, that has actually reminded me of something completely different to what I was going to say, and that is like it's a Pathfinder issue, it's a D&D issue. Is that intimidation, diplomacy, deception? They are equivalent to mind control.
Yeah.
Somebody goes, "Oh, I rolled natural 20, but let's say I got a 30 something on my deception check." That means they believe me. It's like, no. That means that you are convincing. Does not necessarily mean that the NPC is going to believe you.
Yeah.
If you are an untrustworthy person, doesn't matter how convincing you are, it doesn't guarantee the NPC kind of going, "Oh yeah, sort of thing." And that works in all the social skills, and people have this misconception of, oh, intimidate. I mean, I had it in my Pathfinder homebrew where the players entered a crime boss's hideout. They absolutely fucking annihilated everything in there. They got to the boss. One of the players rolled intimidation, and he rolled through the roof. It was like a ridiculous amount. And my response was, yeah, he's afraid. But he knows that right now, everything you've done, because he's got nothing illegal going on here, that you're in the wrong. He knows he's got advantage over you. So yeah, he's scared, but doesn't necessarily mean he's going to buckle. So yeah, thanks for reminding me of that. That was a good one. But the one I was actually going to bring up was, and it's specific to certain systems, is don't split the party.
Yeah. Because there are some systems where that's good.
Yeah.
I mean, too, even just like, even in D&D, even in 5th edition, like, don't split the party is good advice sometimes, but like there are situations where you should. I think any of those like super dogmatic, like even people who are like, min-maxers are a problem. Like you can min-max. I min-max a lot of my characters, but like I then do that to then say, okay, this is a place where I'm going to pull them back a little bit, right? Or like I don't want them to feel too overpowered. I don't want, but like I also don't want to play a character that's garbage, right? Like I don't think it's necessarily min-maxing that's the problem. It's how you play that character.
Yeah, see, I min-max my characters and they're still garbage because I roll like shit.
I mean, but there are some systems. Pathfinder First Edition is a prime example of that.
God,
if you do not min-max, you get left out.
Yeah.
Yep.
You have to, and it's a shame because then it becomes less about role play, ROLE, as it does about ROLL play, and it sucks, to be fair.
Yeah.
But I mean, don't split the party like in Delta Green. If you've got a clock ticking, split the fucking party.
Yeah.
If when something comes to attack you, doesn't matter how many of you there are.
I'm going to disagree with you on that because the last time we played Delta Green and split the party, I got shot in the face.
Yeah, but that
I
was
remember
funny.
the party.
That was fucking hilarious.
It was hilarious.
He was messaging me kind of like, yeah, let him come.
I think
it was good.
Another one that is sort of a prevalent from 5th edition into like other systems is sort of the vibe of you don't want your characters to die. I think especially in the Borg systems, especially in some of the other like OSR systems, it's a lot of fun to think about like this character is gonna die. Like in the Borg systems, it's so funny to me. You can literally roll a character with 1 hit point. If you take damage, you die. Like and like you, I think it's interesting switching from 5e to some of those systems because you get that like fear of death of your character because you're like, I spend more time on this, like whatever. But 5th edition, I think, primes you for you've spent a lot of time with this character, you know, past third level, like them dying is a kind of a shitty thing to have happen. And like, even I think GMs get to the point where they're like, well, I don't want to kill off my players. So maybe that's kind of the myth here is like that killing players is a bad thing to do, right? Like, because I think it kind of transfers from 5th edition, which like even there is arguable that that's probably not necessary, into other systems where death is way more expected, right?
Yeah.
I think that is a more recent sort of stance that people take, though, because you know, Jason Bullman posted on the Pathfinder Facebook group something about, okay, so what homebrew rules do you have for Pathfinder? And all, like most of the ones that were posted, were all in a way to make the game easier for players. It was, you know, oh yeah, because, you know, if you use a hero point, you get to roll with advantage. And it's like, why? I mean, yes, players die, like, not players die, sorry. Characters die, but the protagonist is always going to be the story.
Yeah.
You know, if you have a character that dies, that's going to suck. And if you're emotionally invested, that's even better because it shows that you are invested, but you bring in this new character and it's the story that becomes the protagonist.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I saw one on Threads like earlier and it was, oh yeah, you shouldn't TPK. Fuck no. I don't go out to TPK, but if players make bad choices and it happens.
I mean, that's the thing though, right? Is consequence. Consequence is important. Because consequence is what gives you gravity in situations, right? And like we were saying earlier, it's so hard to capture that element of this could go sideways very fucking quickly, because in games like 5e, that consequence has almost been removed completely because there's always a way out. That's absolutely something that you need to have. Otherwise, there just never feels like there's a consequence to your actions. It's just you can do whatever you want and you'll be fine.
I think it's interesting too, like the TBK problem or the killing players problem oftentimes I think falls to GMs not knowing how to like handle those situations. I think there's with TBKs especially, there's a feeling of like, okay, well, if I kill all the players, like the whole campaign ends, like what do I do in that situation, right? But I think it's funny because I think anytime you look at something that you see as a limitation like that and like turn it around and think about it as like, how can this enable better storytelling? Have them all roll up new characters. They're all in the same town. And one of the previous characters that TPK'd crawls back into town bleeding out. And their last like act is to say, you have to continue this quest. Like there's so many cool things you can do to make that story feel important, to make it feel, you know, it's not just that they died, it's that they died doing something heroically difficult, and like now this new group of people has to overcome even that to you know move forward.
Or I mean, like even like the first kind of mission or quest that this new group has is, well, we had these adventurers that we sent out to investigate the big scary black tower. They never came back. Can you maybe go see what happened there? And then again, you could have, you know, one of the adventurers from the last party like dying at the door when they get there, and that there's like it gives them that whole cool. Okay, we've got a reason to be here now. We've got the info dump from the previous group, essentially, right? And they can crack on. Like, there's so many ways, like you say, to overcome that. And I do think that is a big problem, is that they're worried about killing off everyone in the party, because then they go, like you say, it's the end of their story in their minds. And it definitely needs to be changed, I think, as a viewpoint.
As a player, I would love to play a game where one of my characters dies and then I introduce another, like my next character is like a cleric whose only mission is to resurrect the player that died, right? Like I want that character back. Cool. I will play this cleric, and now they've got to figure out like, all right, how do I get to the body? Like, how do I have the materials that I need to resurrect this? Is it going to take too long? Like there's so many fun things you could do, even if you don't want to give up that character. Like, I don't know. It's an interesting thing.
One idea I had for my Rune Lords campaign, which we kind of left just before the end, and I don't think we'll pick it back up, so it doesn't really matter, was that if the party TPK'd, right, what I would do is I would immediately, they'd be resurrected. They'd be resurrected in a hall near the big bad with all their weapons full. They'd have all their hit points, all their spell things, and they'd go in and they'd finish the campaign. They'd kill the big bad. But when they went back to town, when they went back to the village, they would realize that 20 years had passed. And in those 20 years, the big bad had actually become a ruler of the world, so to speak. So then that campaign would end there. Then the new campaign would be in this world ruled by this guy. And the whole point would be to resurrect these characters. That would be the ultimate quest.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had that all mapped out, but yeah. I'll use it for something else. But I think that was a really good topic. So, thanks, Chris, for kind of writing
Sending that one in. Yeah.
I think it's almost time for us to start wrapping now.
It is indeed.
Wrapping up, should I say. I'm not going to start spitting rhymes.
You're not going to drop a poker rap on us?
I'm not going to, with this voice, but first of all, Conlin, thank you ever so much for joining us. It has been great. Sorry I haven't been
no worries.
Yeah, sorry I haven't been as active as I normally have, but Justin's enjoyed talking about 5e without my snide comments.
So good.
But that just means that I'm gonna get him next week.
Yeah, he is. No, it's been an absolute blast. Yeah, it's been a blast talking to you as well, man. I've really enjoyed it. So yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming on.
Do you want to?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, please carry on.
I was just thank you so much for having me. It's been really great. Really good conversations and tons of fun.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Do you want to drop some links? Do you want to drop some information about where our listeners and viewers can kind of find your stuff?
Yeah. So I am lich.dad kind of everywhere. If you go to lich.dad on the website, that is my personal website. You can find my links to everything. Anywhere that I'm not that, I have Has Been Wizards, which is my TTRPG company. It's wuz.itch.io, and then hasbeenwizards.com. And you can find all my stuff there. You can follow along with the games I'm making. Tales of Initiative is Twitch. I'm all over the place for lots of different things, but yeah, pretty much all the places.
All right. And Justin, once again, thank you ever so much for spending some time with me this evening. Can you just tell people whereabouts on the interwebs you're able to be found?
Of course. So I'm pretty much everywhere at Justin Accurate TV. And no couch. We're not talking about Winnie the Pooh. Chat. Yeah, so pretty much everywhere, Justin Accurate TV, on our Facebook group as well. And yeah, over on the Discord.
All right. As for me, you can find me at naturaljuan@dice.camp over on Mastodon. You can also find me as the voice behind nearly everything we do in social media, mostly on Threads at Too Legit to Crit, but we're also on Instagram, on TikTok, Blue Sky. We also have a Facebook group. By all means, come and say hello, come and join us and interact with us there. I want to thank everyone who's been in the chat. It's been nice for a change for me to actually be in there and interacting a tiny bit more. But if you like what you hear, if you like what you see, give us a rating, give us a subscribe, tell your friends about us, because we want to grow with this community and we want to kind of help bring people up with us as we do. And most importantly, thank you to every one of you who have spent some of their valuable time just listening to us waffle on about tabletop role-playing games. Thank you very much. Good night.
See you later, everyone.